So it's a common joke among Star Wars fans that the Jedi were masters at committing war crimes. But is this true? Did they actually commit any war crimes? And if so, what war crimes did they commit? Today, I answer that very question. So first, let's answer, what is a war crime? Here's some definitions. The Legal Information Institute, or LII for short, a non-profit public service of Cornell Law School, describes them like this. A war crime is a serious violation of international humanitarian law committed during armed conflict. It encompasses acts that are prohibited by international treaties and conventions, including the Geneva Conventions and the Rome Statute of International Criminal Court. To be liable for a war crime, the victim must be protected under the Geneva Conventions. GC 1, 2, and 3 apply to soldiers, while GC4 applies to civilians and unlawful combatants. That's a clear explanation as it is, but to be thorough, let's quickly see what the British Metropolitan Police have to say. They describe war crimes like this. War crimes are crimes that come under the collective name of core international crimes. Core international crimes are some of the gravest crimes in international law. Examples of them can include the crime of genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and torture. So war crimes are violations of international laws committed during war. There's a big list of standards that all countries must follow, coming from treaties and conventions such as the Geneva Conventions and the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. Breaking these rules is a serious violation and has serious consequences. Now, the Geneva Conventions and the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court are long documents, so I'm not going to cover them in full here. After all, I'm only discussing Star Wars, not real-world circumstances. Instead, I'm looking at a selection of war crimes from the LII website. With that established, let's go see whether the Jedi have committed war crimes. I'm going to focus only on the Clone Wars conflict for this video. First up is willful killing. Willful killing involves killing someone who is protected under the Geneva Conventions within an international armed conflict. And on this very first crime, we've already found one committed by the Jedi. At the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, we see Anakin kill Count Dooku. At this point, Count Dooku has lost both of his hands and is completely unarmed, and very much heavily injured. He is no longer an active combatant, and it's absolutely clear that the fight is over. Despite this, Anakin still goes on to decapitate the Sith there and then. No trial, nothing. Now, if we look at the First Geneva Convention of 1949, Article 12, we read this. Members of the armed forces and other persons mentioned in the following article who are wounded or sick shall be respected and protected in all circumstances. They shall be treated humanely and cared for by the party to the conflict in whose power they may be, without any adverse distinction founded on sex, race, nationality, religion, political opinions, or any other similar criteria. Any attempts upon their lives or violence to their persons shall be strictly prohibited. In particular, they shall not be murdered or exterminated, subjected to torture or biological experiments. They shall not willfully be left without medical assistance and care, nor shall conditions exposing them to contagion or infection be created. Count Dooku falls under this definition, clearly being already wounded. Instead of killing him, Anakin should have kept him alive and allowed for him to receive medical care. Execution was way too far. And before you start commenting that this isn't a Jedi thing, it's just an Anakin thing, I think it's important to note that although the Jedi disagreed with Anakin's approach, they did basically nothing in response to it. In the real world, committing a war crime is a very serious thing and has consequences, but somehow Anakin gets off scot-free and even gets a promotion not long after. So yeah, I wouldn't call the Jedi Order innocent in this situation. That's one war crime down already. Is it the only one, or are there more to come? Up next is torture or inhuman treatment, including biological experiments. And the Jedi are absolutely guilty of this too. In the Clone Wars Season 2 episode Children of the Force, Anakin, Obi-Wan and Mace Windu Jedi mind trick Cad Bane to get information from him on where the missing holocron and Force-sensitive kids are located. However, this is not painless. Cad Bane's mind is strong and requires 3 Jedi working together to make him cooperate. Even then, the process is harmful and potentially very damaging. And the Jedi knew this before they attempted it. Listen to this.
Maybe if we all concentrated on his mind together.
Using the Force to compel a strong mind to cooperate is risky.
There is a danger that his mind could be destroyed in the process.
Well, do we have another choice?
This is outright unacceptable behaviour. The Jedi should not have the right to torture people. Just look at Cad Bane's response to the mind tricks. He is in agony. And to top it all off, Anakin suggests trying again after seeing just how much pain Cad Bane was in.
Perhaps we should try again.
This is clear as day a war crime, and it was committed by 3 highly respected Jedi, all of which ended up on the Jedi Council by the end of the war. These are the kinds of people that led the Jedi Order. Also, this wasn't a one-off for Anakin, who also tortured Poggle the Lesser when Ahsoka was being attacked by Geonosian brainworms. And now that's 2 war crimes down, and the Jedi have committed both of them. Let's continue and see just how many more we can find. Now there's willfully causing great suffering or serious injury to body or health. This applies to those protected under the Geneva Conventions. I think this is covered by my previous example of Poggle the Lesser. Although we don't see the extent of Poggle's injuries, I just don't see how Anakin's treatment of him here wouldn't cause him great suffering or injury. I mean, Anakin literally throws Poggle across the room and force chokes him. Anakin would have known that a blow like that could seriously injure a person, yet he did it anyway. Additionally, strangling a person is a terrible thing, and is very serious. According to the Institute for Addressing Strangulation, there is no safe way to be strangled, and strangulation can cause ongoing issues after the event. Even if Anakin didn't intend for long-term harm, how can we say that he didn't intend to injure when he so violently choked Poggle? Next, there's extensive destruction and appropriation of property, not justified by military necessity, carried out unlawfully and wantonly. And this is another one I believe was committed by the Jedi. During the Onderon arc in the Clone Wars, in the episode Frontrunners, the Jedi assist the local rebels in fighting the Separatists and the planet's corrupt king, and towards that end, the rebels and Ahsoka blow up the Onderon power generator, knocking out the power grid. The explosion is big and damaging, and therefore I'd say an argument could be made that this counts as extensive destruction of property, and you've got to consider that medical devices could have been shut down by this attack, which could have been disastrous. Additionally, for the Jedi, I don't think you could say that this is justified by military necessity, as the Jedi weren't really supposed to be helping out in the attacks, but only advising and observing. And Ahsoka did get involved in this specific attack, taking out some droids. Now the intricacies of this specific crime can be questioned a bit, as I don't know how a judge would interpret the situation. After all, what counts as extensive, and what counts as military necessity, is subjective, so I could see an argument that this one would potentially not count. Also, Ahsoka's contribution was minimal, and the attack was planned by the rebels, so of the war crime examples in this video, this would be the one in which the Jedi appear the least guilty. Still not a great look for the Jedi though, that I'm having to question it. Also, I just want to mention that for this specific point, I was inspired to look at the Onderon arc by Kevin Erdman from Screen Rant's article 6 War Crimes the Jedi Committed in the Clone Wars, although the idea of considering property damage came from my own approach to the storyline. After this, there's compelling a prisoner of war or other protected person to serve in the forces of a hostile power. And you know what? At last, I think we've got one that the Jedi haven't committed. The closest example I could come up with was persuading Ventress to help slay Dooku, but at this point she had already turned her back on Dooku and the Separatists, and was already an enemy to them. So yeah, that doesn't really count. But anyway, let me know if you can think of any actual examples. But next there's willfully depriving a prisoner of war or other protected person of the rights of fair and regular trial. And I don't see why this shouldn't apply to Count Dooku. He was defeated, at the mercy of Anakin when he was killed, and there was nothing to stop Anakin bringing him in for trial. So that's a big yes for this crime. Additionally, in Revenge of the Sith, Windu goes to kill Palpatine when he's on the floor saying, "I'm too weak. Don't kill me. Please. Please don't. Please don't." Of course Palpatine was putting on a bit of a performance here, as he proves moments later that he's not as weak as he claims, but Windu wasn't fazed one bit by Palpatine's cries for mercy. He should have at least offered the chance for a rest, rather than going for the killing blow. After all, Palpatine had basically surrendered himself. After this is unlawful deportation and transfer, or unlawful confinement. This is another one which I think the Jedi didn't do, although once again I'm willing to be proven wrong. I also don't think the Jedi took any hostages, which is our last war crime. And that's the end of the LII list, but I'm going to finish this video by sharing some extra war crime examples I found discussed by people online. I will give credit to the people who I found mentioning these examples, as of course these ones aren't my own examples. Let's get into it. Ace of Diamonds on Reddit mentioned Perf ID, or false surrender, which occurs in the Clone Wars movie and Season 7 of the Clone Wars. Eldrin Jack on Reddit said that having combatants under the age of 15 is a war crime, which the Jedi did with their Padawans. Then there's the clones, which are a strange one, as they age twice as fast, meaning that many of them were under 15 too, despite being physically equivalent to someone twice their age. Kevin Erdman from Screen Rant discussed attacking fleeing combatants, which Yoda did in the very first episode of the Clone Wars. He also mentioned the Republic-Mandalore Treaty, prohibiting the Jedi from invading Mandalore, which the Jedi broke, sending Ahsoka and a bunch of clones to Mandalore for the Siege of Mandalore. As well as this, there's terrorism charges to consider, with the Jedi helping freedom fighters on Onderon. And finally, David Zimmerman from CBR suggested one which I'm embarrassed I didn't consider myself: the use of slaves to fight the Clone Wars. Obviously, the Republic never claimed the clones to be slaves, but they really are. This is actually something I really hope is explored in the future, as it's such a massive discussion which just seems to keep being ignored. Anyway, this brings the total different sorts of war crimes committed to 11. That's crazy. But what if I told you that the Jedi actually haven't committed any war crimes at all? You see, this concept requires that we ignore one thing. War crimes don't exist in the Star Wars universe. In fact, Star Wars is set a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So if it was somehow in our world, how could it be bound by laws that wouldn't be established for ages? Of course, all these crimes are highly immoral, and are terrible acts for anyone to be committing, especially so-called peacekeepers, so I wouldn't exactly call that a win for the Jedi. I'd be more inclined to say that the Republic was in desperate need of these laws to help prevent such harmful practices. Anyway, that's all for today. Please let me know in the comments if there's any that I missed, and we hope to see you later at Volt Holocron.